We back. Yeah, we back. Now, today, man, we got to talk about it, man. We got to talk about it. We're going to talk about President William Ruto, the president of Kenya. Now, as we already know, President William Ruto, a darling of the West. I believe that recently, Kenya was designated as a so-called non-NATO ally. And in recent weeks, Ruto recently made a state visit to the White House to meet with President Joe Biden to solidify and display the deep level of their partnership and friendship. And if you remember, President Biden had sung the praises of William Ruto, saying that he is the embodiment and a symbol of democracy on the African continent. Now, I gotta admit, in my lifetime, I've never witnessed a politician make such a 180-degree shift, such as William Ruto. I remember when he was campaigning for president, he was talking about empowering local industries, becoming more self-sufficient, becoming less dependent on foreign aid and foreign investment, just for him to get elected, get into office, and basically say, man, forget about local industry. We jumping in bed with the international community. Forget about asserting our sovereignty. We jumping head first into bed with the United States and the IMF. You know, it's been kind of crazy to witness. But anyways, today's video is not about that. In today's video, I'm going to be covering what's currently going down in Kenya. In case you didn't know, it's massive protests, massive demonstrations, massive mobilizations happening across Kenya at the moment. They're going crazy right now. And in response to the citizens of Kenya exercising their democratic liberties, President Ruto has decided to deploy the military against unarmed protesters and kill his own civilians in response to their protests. Now, I want to ask the audience, do you think the United States and her allies, her Western allies, are going to remove the administration of William Ruto? Are they going to militarily intervene to maintain the integrity of democracy and human rights? Are they going to sanction the administration of William Ruto? I just want to ask the audience a question. And if you remember, I kind of got into a little debate, back and forth a few weeks ago with another content creator, another YouTuber, who had some strong words for the administration of Ibrahim Traore, called him a dictator, said that he was oppressing and massacring his own civilians and silencing the opposition. Y'all remember that? I was talking to Black Conservative Strikes Back, right? Now, of course, he's silent on this topic, you know, because he was singing the praises of William Ruto also, you know, democratically elected, you know, he's in bed with the United States. Oh, he's an intelligent leader. He's a dignified, you know, he was just, you know, singing the praises of William Ruto. So I'm sitting back and I'm patiently waiting for that video. I hope he goes 100 miles per hour against William Ruto the same way he went 100 miles per hour against Ibrahim Traore. But anyways, man, back to the topic. Let's jump straight into these articles, man. Take a look up on the screen. As you can see, 5 people killed as the Kenyan police cracked down on tax protests and the parliament was set afire. 31 people were injured, including 13 hit by live bullets, and 5 people have been killed. And the 5 people who were killed were simply treating the injured. So apparently the people who were murdered were not even active belligerents. They were simply tending to the injuries of their fellow compatriots. And President William Ruto, the so-called symbol and embodiment of democracy, decided to use lethal force against his own citizens. Now, at this point, I'm expecting the articles to come out from Human Rights Watch. I'm expecting sanctions from the United States, from the European Union, from all Western institutions. I'm expecting William Ruto's visa to the United States, London, France to be revoked, because obviously the United States and the other Western allies would never support a dictator who violates human rights, would they? Of course not. They would never. Of course, right? They would never. That goes against their so-called mission statement. But anyway, let's jump into this article, man. At least 5 people were killed during street protests over a new tax proposal Tuesday in Kenya's capital, as police fired on protesters after thousands stormed into Kenya's parliament and set part of it on fire. The protests targeted Kenya's president, William Ruto, who, despite being lauded in Washington during a recent state dinner hosted by President Biden, has become deeply unpopular at home over tax hikes that have enraged the middle class. His ruling party pushed through a new tax bill Tuesday as the protests mounted. Man, listen, this that good old Western style democracy they be talking about, man. That good old Western style democracy. You see the white boys in Washington, they singing your praises, but your own citizens back home, they talking about you gotta go. They want you gone. Because like I said in my video last night, when you get in bed with the so-called international community, and the international community is nothing but the Western governments and their allies and their institutions, when you get in bed with these characters, you have to take certain action and you have to enact certain policy that would go against the prosperity of your own citizens, right? Like I said, man, the Western governments, they don't understand the language of partnership, true partnership, where it's mutually respectful. They only understand the language of exploitation, subjugation, especially when you decide to lock in with the United States. Part of the unspoken agreement is that you have to, in a sense, renounce your sovereignty. You have to give up your strategic autonomy. You no longer have the same freedom of movement that you once did before. And that's the sacrifice you got to make in order for them to categorize you as a so-called symbol of freedom and democracy and being a defender of human rights. Now, let's continue. At 3 p.m., a crowd of protesters who appeared to be unarmed breached parliament buildings in Nairobi city center after entering the heavily fortified compound. Gunshots could be heard from parliament. In the streets, police beat protesters and fired tear gas at them. Now, a few weeks ago, the Western media went on a smear campaign, a slander campaign against Ibrahim Traore, saying that he's a dictator, massacring civilians. And meanwhile, the so-called citizens he was massacring were collaborators who are working hand in hand and supporting Islamic jihadist terrorists, right? Now, I want to see if the Western media is going to go on the same slander campaign against William Ruto, who shot dead his own citizens who were expressing their democratic rights, protesting against a law they felt was unjust. And keep in mind, I believe today was the day that the so-called Kenyan troops landed in Haiti for the so-called multinational security mission funded and backed by the United States. Now, if these dudes is shooting their own citizens dead in the head for protesting against unjust economic policies, I can only imagine what they're about to do to my people. I can only imagine what they're about to do to my people. I remember they tried to frame this as a so-called Pan-African collaboration. But now as I'm looking at the developments in this protest, if these dudes don't even got love for their own citizens, don't even got love for their own people, I know they don't got no love for my people. And I'm not talking about the citizens of Kenya, but I'm talking about the police of Kenya, right? Those who are there to protect and serve. Listen, it's not looking good, man. It's not looking good. Let's continue. During the protests, CNN showed live footage of a protester who the network said was Barack Obama's sister, just after she was tear gassed, choking and wiping her eyes. Man, listen, this dude done tear gassed Barack Obama's sister. Man, listen, William Ruto, man, down with William Ruto, man. Get this dictator the fuck up out of here. Get this despot, this dictator, this tyrant the fuck up out of office. This man is a tyrant. He is an authoritarian oppressing his own people. And if you ask me, it is time for sanctions. It's time for military intervention from the international community to forcefully remove him from power. It's time for sanctions to be placed on his whole family, visas to be canceled for his whole family. It's time for assets to be frozen. The same exact punishments they gave to the homies down in the Sahel. The same thing they did to the president of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. We need that same exact punishment. We cannot tolerate these tyrants on the African continent. These men who are trampling on the liberty of democracy. We need these men to be held accountable. Now, y'all know I'm being a little bit sarcastic, but I'm kind of serious too. Right? If the Western governments are not hypocrites, they would hold William Ruto accountable in the same exact way they hold anybody else accountable for so-called violating the integrity of democracy, right? So I'm going to wait and see. On how hard they come down on William Ruto, right? Like I said, they just designated Kenya as a non-NATO ally. So it's too late now. They can't turn back now. They can't start slandering him now. They got to go all the way. They got to have his back all the way, right or wrong. Because even though he's an oppressive, authoritarian, despotic tyrant, the fact of the matter is he is an ardent defender of U.S. interests on the African continent. So even though he's lodging bullets inside the head of his own citizens, the United States and her allies are going to look the other way, right? They're going to look the other way. But at the same time, they're going to make up stories and create falsehood and lies against our honorable brothers in the Sahel, right? They're going to tell lies on our brothers in the Sahel. But when it comes to real shit that's happening in William Ruto's country, they're going to look the other way. They're not going to sanction them. They're not going to isolate them. They're not going to withdraw foreign aid from him. They're not going to try to sabotage his government or slander him in the media. They're going to look the other way. Matter of fact, worst comes to worst, they're going to support William Ruto in oppressing his citizens. If the protesters get crazy, man, the United States, they're going to send weapons to the Kenyan police to lodge more bullets in the heads of their citizens. Watch, because that's what they do. That's what they do. When they get a regime that's friendly to their interests, they support them in violently oppressing their own citizens in order to protect the administration. That's the exact reason why you have certain presidents in Africa that's been in power 20 years, 30 years, 40 years with full backing and support by the West, even when they imprison and murder the opposition. And why is that? Because you are protecting their economic interests. You are a strategic partner, a strategic ally, and they're going to do everything in their power to make sure you remain in power. Now, let's continue. Thousands of protesters stormed Kenya's parliament Tuesday to protest tax proposals, burning part of the building, sending lawmakers fleeing and drawing fire from police in unrest that the president vowed to squash. Several people were killed. It was the most direct assault on the government in decades. Journalists saw at least 3 bodies outside the complex where police had opened fire, and medical workers reported that 5 people were killed. Clashes had spread to other cities. Now, I just want to point out how the media frames the narrative, right? Because if you talk to the Kenyan citizens, they'll tell you that they felt bamboozled by William Ruto. They felt that he ran on a campaign promising certain things, promoting certain rhetoric, and he did not fulfill on any of those promises. In fact, he went back and made a 180-degree turn and abolished all of those plans. And instead of strengthening local industry, asserting national sovereignty, and enhancing the life of the average Kenyan citizen like he promised, he instead decided to jump in bed with the international community, renounce his national sovereignty, and make life harder for the average Kenyan citizen. And that's why the citizens of Kenya are mobilizing in the streets. But if you notice, the Western media, instead of standing in solidarity with the citizens of Kenya, they're standing in solidarity with the government of William Ruto, calling it an assault on the government. But when Ibrahim Traore is going to war against jihadist insurgents and their collaborators, they call it assassinating civilians. But when the citizens of Kenya exercise their right and liberty of democracy, they call it an assault on the government. Shit is crazy, bro. Anyways, man, let's take a look at some of the reactions on social media. Take a look up on the screen. This brother said, President Ruto has ended tribalism and united all Kenyans against his will. This person said, Kenya will not be business as usual tomorrow. You cannot shoot 10 people dead and inflict 50 life-changing injuries on African youth exercising their rights and expect everyone to go home the next day. Being overwhelmed is not a justifiable excuse. They are your people. Now, take a look up on the screen, man. Take a look at some of the posters that the protesters was walking around with. Man, they got that boy. They're talking about he's a puppet of the West and the IMF. Man, this is so embarrassing, man. This is so embarrassing, man. Like, wow, look how the mighty have fallen, man. Just last month, he was in the White House, kicking it with Joe Biden, having dinner. Now a month later, they trying to drive him out of power. Man, I know William Ruto's stressing right now, man. He's stressed the fuck out, man. Listen, let's continue. This person said, Parliament done. City Hall done. Next up, the State House. We want to talk to William Ruto personally. This person said, and the most infuriating part is Ruto will get away with it because he is the United States' darling in Africa. He sold Kenya for his own selfish reasons. Now, like I said, I'm going to sit back and I'm going to watch. I'm going to wait for the sanctions. I'm going to wait for the slander. I'm going to wait for the international community to mobilize the troops to remove him from power. Because obviously, as we can see, he is a violator of human rights and the democratic process. So we cannot afford to have men like him in power. You know, he has to be held accountable. He must be held accountable. And we need to get a regime in place that is respectful towards democracy, right? Because obviously William Ruto, he is not a Democrat. He does not believe in democracy. So we have to get him out of power. That's what it is, man. That's what it is. So I'm counting on the United States. I'm counting on all of her allies to collectively sanction the administration of William Ruto. I'm waiting for his visa to be revoked. I'm waiting for all his assets to be frozen. I'm waiting for Human Rights Watch to drop an article talking about his human rights abuses. I'm sitting back and I'm waiting on it. Let's see if it happens. Who knows? Anyways, man, it's your boy Nefakarada Saline back in the building. Yes, indeed. Cash App in the description. Support the album, man. Peace.
No. Feel like I'm 75. Know that your team be full of them traders, you know that can never be mine. I'm grabbing a thought when I drive. I'm back in my zone and we on. She said that she ready to come be my wifey and hoping I don't do her wrong. I gave her my word in this bond. I'm whipping the best like a lamb. I mean no chicken and lamb. Accustomed to call me the man. I never be up on the gram. I'm keeping that way undercover. She want me to tell her I love her. I told her I'm breaking the rules. I told her we making the news. Back in my city they loving me. Standing alone I'm 100 deep. Enemy plotting and still in reach. They trying to make sure that we underneath. Trying to make sure that we never make it. Coming for power, come get acquainted. Coming for everything that I wanted. Feeling like Drake but I really wrote it. Feeling like Kendrick, I'm checking names. Gotta roll up while I go insane. Got so much stress I been gained weight. Stuffing these racks in this Louis case. One thing for certain, I'm about to check. Keep it 100 and nothing less. Stick with the family since day one. Had to stay down till my day come. Had to stay down but I'm never patient. Hop on the mic and I'm motivated. Hop on the mic and I drive a classic. Haters can't see me, they copping glasses. Back in the studio making magic. Got a new tape and it's in production. Back on my business, I got a budget. Staying low key when I'm out in public. Feel like I'm 75. Know that your team be full of them traders, you know that can never be mine. I'm grabbing a thought when I drive. I'm back in my zone and we on. She said that she ready to come be my wifey and hoping I don't do her wrong. I gave her my word in this bond. I'm whipping the best like a lamb. I mean no chicken and lamb. Accustomed to call me the man. I never be up on the gram. I'm keeping that way undercover. She want me to tell her I love her. I told her I'm breaking the rules. I told her we making the news.